Hello, my name is Audrey Gordon, and I'd like to welcome you to day 16 of the Dataverse Advent Calendar. Today we're going to talk about business rules. And a lot of people have asked in the past, when should I use business rules? What are they really for? And I divide this into three categories, just generally talking about business rules, not even thinking of Dataverse, but business rules in any solution. Starting with the form-centric rules. So when I speak of form-centric rules, it means how are you checking and helping the end user fill out the form? Because when they finish filling out the form, if they click submit and they get some error messages, that might be a little bit difficult for them to handle. But if you can help them as they fill out the form to get it all right, so that when they press submit, there will be no error, this is a good practice. So think about situations where you want to make sure that the start date that you're asking for comes before the end date. And the end date comes after the start date. So it's very easy for someone when they're selecting from a calendar to accidentally pick a date that is incorrect. It can't be correct because you're saying you started in 2022 and you ended in 2021. That's impossible, right? And so rather than let them submit that error, go ahead and validate that the dates are accurate. You want to make sure that your minimum viable fields are completed at the right time. And this can get confusing with required fields. So required fields are required on any submit. So especially the first submit, which means that anything that's required will prevent me from making a data entry, right? I cannot proceed with my data entry because I don't have all the required fields filled in. It will save nothing. It'll just say, nope, won't take it, right? But sometimes you want to give people like multiple opportunities to fill out information, although you may need something at a specific given time. So I think we'll talk about this soon. The business process flow does help here because it helps your users to see at what point in the process do certain things need to be filled out. And using business rules with business process flows is a good idea to make sure that people always fill out what's necessary at the right time. But you can always do a check and say, okay, do we have the two things we need for you to create this record? If we do, we'll let you move on. But later on, you might need to get that other thing, and you can do a check from field to field to see whether you have what you need at any given time. The second reason why people will use business rules is for policies or procedures that they want to enforce. So it's not about the form, it's not about Dataverse, it's about the company and the way they do things and the way they proceed and the way they collect information and make sure that the quality of the information is accurate. So for instance, there's 3 examples here, but in all of these, you can probably think of a dozen examples. Expense report values must equal the total refund amount requested. So maybe you're looking at a form and it has a field total refund amount requested, and then you have to itemize all the things that you spent. Well, if what you spent is less than the amount you're requesting, then that's going to kick back an error. All right, so you have to make sure that, and that, other companies may decide, they can ask for a refund that differs from what they spent. This is all up to the company to make that decision, and that's why I call it a policy. Is workflow-driven rules, right? Workflow-driven rules are rules that provoke a follow-up, right? So, for instance, there's 3 examples here. Managers must acknowledge vacation requests within 3 calendar days or they are canceled and must be resubmit. These are also kind of rules that the business decides on. Secondly, expense reports totaling over 1,000 must have skip manager approval. And then change orders must be approved by all project resident engineers. So basically, these are also related to the policies, the second one, but they also require a follow-up by a person, right? And so because they require a follow-up, I include it as workflow driven, although these can be done through automation as well. So this page just kind of shows you an idea of what do I use business rules for, and what I think is important about these is that they add logic to your data model. And this logic that you add through these business rules are actually going to apply to all of the applications that you would run on top of that entity or that form, or the forms that you are using in your solutions, no matter what type of solutions you build. Now, there are some scenarios that are only covered by model driven, and I'll show you those. Okay, so in looking at business rules, this is like the UI that we're going to look at together. We're going to look at this in real life, but notice the ones that have the lighter square around them. Those are going to be specific to model driven, whereas those with the darker squares around them, they are both model driven and Canvas. So there are a few that are specific to model driven, and the others will work in both. But what I notice is used the most is the set field value, is the one that I see the most in both Canvas and model, and they do work. So you can set the field value, but the point on Canvas I want to point out is that this happens on submit, right? So the moment the action hits the data is where that change is going to occur. You may not see it immediately on the screen. All right, so this is really great for setting like back-end fields that they don't even see on the form. If they're in the United States, set their company code not even on the form, but it'll set that company code for you as soon as it hits the record. Okay, so these are things to think about. Let's take a look at this real quick in Power Apps. This one you may remember is the one that I did a couple of days ago for the site inspection. Basically, when you create a site inspection, and I'll just do this. And we'll do this for, let's do it for a datum, and let's have a start date of next week. All right, so now basically I've made a new site inspection and there's no due date. I really don't need the end user to set this due date if I want to control it. And so even on this form, I can set this due date on the form to read only, but I can use a business rule to calculate this. And this is what I've done in this business rule. So I've said, if the due date is blank, and this usually means it's new, especially after this business rule is implemented, then I'd like you to set the due date to date created plus 7 days. And so what it will actually do is add 7 days to the date I created this and update it for me. So if I save, you'll see that that's set. 19 plus 7 is 23. And so I'm actually enforcing a 7-day limit to completing this task. Okay, so going back here and kind of seeing how I did that, let's create it again. So I'm just going to do new business rule. And by the way, I'm sorry I didn't show you this. You create business rules on the table level, so that you can access them from the table, from the Dataverse workspace or the table hub. Just click on business rules. There's the one I created. Let's create one as well. And when you first open it, you can drop down this little chevron, which I often say will hide itself, but if you know it's there, you'll know it's there. And we'll just call this add 10 days, right? And you know, you can call it whatever you'd want. add 10 days to due date. Okay, so basically this one is going to add 10 days to the due date, and I just put due blank, right? So you can name these conditions. This is for the site inspection. This is on an entity level. If the due date does not contain data, so it's very self-evident, you know, as far as this UI is super simple, right? The hard thing to remember is when you finish figuring out your condition, don't forget to hit apply. This is like the biggest thing people forget to do, is just hit this blue button. And it's nice and blue, but people still kind of forget it. And basically, when you hit it, you'll see things change. You know, you'll see the due date, the name that you put there, and you'll see the condition down here. All right. So then I go back to my components and I say what I want to happen. So then I can drag this set field value over, and I can just say update due date, right? Maybe that's the name, simple as that. I want the due date, and I don't want it to be a value. If it's a value, I have to literally pick the value. So I'd rather it be a formula. So I'm going to do the date created plus, and this time we're going to say 10, right? And apply. Okay, so remember to hit apply. If you don't see both of the things that you did, then you're in trouble, right? And you can always add more. Like when you have, let's see, if I go to the conditions here, if you want to add multiple conditions, just hit new and they'll start to stack up right here. Now, because I have a rule already on that table, I want to be careful to deactivate that rule. Okay, so I can turn it off so that that rule is not in conflict with the one I'm doing. Another thing you can do is go edit it and hit deactivate. So you'll see deactivate when it's on, but I turned it off what I consider the easy way. Just hit the three dots and turn it off. So then now I go back to the one I just made, which is called add 10 days. I apply, and then what you want to do is you want to save. You want to validate. This will check for any errors, and it will tell you exactly what the error is. And then you want to activate. Now over here there is a scope. You can choose to do it on an entity level or table level, or you can do it for everything. Okay, so now that it's activated, let's close this. Let's close all these extra windows I have open here. And let's refresh here. That activation step that you saw me take, that turned it on. Okay, so it's now turned on. Here's our new add 10 days, and it's on. Backward planning is off. Okay, so now if I go back and I create a new site inspection, let's call this follow-up on Expo, and we're going to do this for Adventure Works. Actual start is on the 12th, and now watch when I save this time. There we go. We've got 10 days, the created date. So today is the 16th, and so 10 days plus the 16th is the 26th. All right, so it is very easy to kind of navigate through these business rules and set them up as you need. I think the biggest tips I will give you is first plan them, like before you start building them, literally plan them and say, okay, where do I need business rules? Think about your forms, think about the policies that people sometimes disrespect. Try to ensure those policies are respected through your data model. And then finally, you can always set up workflow that can be triggered by any of the actions that you do. I like to have a little conditional field in my table that I'll use for Power Automate, for instance. And so in my business rule, I might set that trigger to true, that column to true, and then Power Automate's watching. And when that goes true, Power Automate initiates a workflow. So sometimes I'll do that because it's really easy to do. Okay, I hope this makes sense to you. I think this is the kind of thing that really saves time, both for the end user and for those of you that are trying to ensure data quality. It's a great topic, and I actually did a video a few years back on business rules where I kind of talk for like 30 minutes about business rules purely. And I put that video link there for you to see. It'll be in the description. All right, that is day 16, talking about business rules. I thank you for watching today, and I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow for day 17 of the Dataverse Advent Calendar. Happy holidays.